Hi, party people. Welcome to the third InDesign tutorial. This InDesign tutorial is going to cover the second day of class. If this is a Tuesday, Thursday. If this is Monday, Wednesday, Friday, I don't know what to tell you. But I will say there are a couple things we're covering in this one. So one, how do you put pictures into your compositions? There's a couple different ways to do that, and I want to talk about where you get them, how you do it. And then two, how do you color stuff? So along the way, I'm going to cover some other little tips and tricks. But yeah, it's mostly going to cover just the things we would talk about on that second day of class. Sadly, I've recorded this video already once today and made this beautiful composition, but turned out, uploaded it, edited it, and it didn't have any sound. The sound had not been recording. And so, sadly, in my heart, I can no longer use the video. So, sad times. Always make sure your audio is recording. With that, though, I do want to start and do it kind of like from the heart, from the beginning, as we go. So, I'm just going to do a new document. So, I go to your same place. So, you should, have those use regular old settings. I'm going to do junk file demo for real. And I'm going to move a little bit quick through the setting up of this, but just to review. So, setting up my file, change from picas to inches, because we gotta. I've got no facing pages, which I like. I'm only going to do one page, which is good. And then I'm going to keep the margins at the standard of where they kind of start. So, I'm just going to go create, wait a beat, and then we get our composition. I want to set up 3 pictures across, 3 columns at the bottom, and then a title at the top. So I'm going to start by just creating my little columns at the bottom. I'm going to do it just so it fits across within the margin. I'm going to do fill with placeholder text. I'm going to use Control B, and I am going to create 3 columns. I don't really need to do any other options with it. And you see I get my selection tool, so I'm selected off of my text. And then I'm going to go and get my rectangle frame tool. Because remember, the rectangle frame tool is what you use to show this is where images will go in the composition. I'm actually going to go to like the bottom corner of where I want my box. And I'm going to make it about here. But while I'm dragging, I'm going to hold the shift key so it's a perfect square. So I do that, it gets to here, got my perfect square. I'm going to go down by the corner, again, hold the shift key, get myself a perfect square. Go down by the corner, and get myself a perfect square. If yours are not perfect squares, you might try to do that. Or you might take a break and just say, I don't care if they're squares or not. It's perfectly fine. So I've got my 3 squares. Again, I'm going to get my selection tool, click off. Then I'm going to go and get one more text box at the top. And I'm just going to put it like broadly here. So it's a little bit down from the margin. Not the biggest deal. And I want to change, so I don't just do cute cats. You can see I can do cats. Cats and hats. Isn't it great? And now I'm going to do other pets in hats. A magazine for the people. I am going to increase the typeface of this a good bit. Push it up. I think previously I put this to 70. I'm going to put the bottom line to just about 40. You can see I just highlight. So I highlight it, and then I pop it on up. Let's see if I can get this up to 70. And I do. Remember, though, I do have to center it all. So I'm going to first highlight it, go to paragraph center. So I center it horizontally in the page. Then to center it vertically, what do? Control B, send me back to those text frame options. I'm going to go from align top to align center. And now we've got a basic layout, right? So we've seen this type of layout before. I've got spaces for images. It's relatively crap, principally, right? It's got some columns, it's got some borders, that type of stuff. But I want to talk in order and first talk about how you put the images in, and then talk about how you put the colors in. So images first. The first thing you got to do is you got to get your images. Now, there's 2 ways to have images, right? So you can have image downloaded on your computer, or you can have an image that you're just copy pasting in. If you download the image, sometimes you can get a better fidelity of the file. It's really kind of like a better practice to do it, to have the actual file somewhere in your computer. But then, imagine if the file lives on your... Let me make myself bigger. Imagine if the file lives on your computer, the image file, and you also have the project file living on your computer. Imagine these as like two connected things. So if you were to move your project file to another computer, it's not going to know it's not going to know where that image is linked to. So it can create problems for if you're moving from computer to computer. What I would probably do is put your project file into a folder with whatever images and other files you're using, and then just open that folder from place to place. But that is just my suggestion. So I want to show you that there's two ways to do it, and then I'll let you kind of like choose your own adventure for the third way. But as you know, I need to find my images because I, sadly, do not have them. So I'm going to use a different method. So I've got cute cats and hats. So I'm going to do cute animals in hats. Hopefully I get some that are all good. A hedgehog, a thing. So I'm going to go through. I'm going to find a couple here and make sure that they are big enough and they work. So 880 by 135. I'm going to go open image in new tab in this. And the reason why is it shows me kind of how big the image is, right? So pretty big image, pretty good size there. Oh, a cute pig. What a pig we've got. So an 800 by 800, pretty good size. Open image in a new tab. Oh my God, Sheriff Bunny. Sheriff Bunny is obviously, I'm going to try and have it come. So let's see what happens if I open image in a new tab. It allows me to do that. Hooray. Next thing I do is got to make sure that I can save them or use them. So if I go, save image as, I want to make sure that it's coming up as a JPEG and not as a WEPB or as a, I think it's like a GIF-J. There's a couple new files that have come up basically because they are web files and not actually image files. It's the way it's coded. But I'm going to save this, so it's Animals and Hats 5. I'm going to put it just in my downloads file. Throw it down in here. And then this one I'm just going to keep up here, and this one I'm going to keep up here so I can show you kind of how to use it. So let's say I want to put these into my InDesign file. First thing I want to tell you is you do not want to just paste this generally into the paper as a whole. Let me show you why. So if I go File, Place, this is going to be the way it's almost like import. So imagine place as like File Import or Import a picture and really put anything under the sun using File Place. You can see I've got my lamb here because I'm already in my Downloads folder. If it was put in a different folder, I have to go to that folder, click the lamb, and I just go Open. Now you can see I've got the lamb kind of like snug to my mouse. And if I just click anywhere, oh God, if I just click anywhere, so not in the box, it just pops up as a whole. And then I got to kind of move it to the spot, and I got to like shrink it down to what I want. And that's not what we want to do because we started, remember, with these frames. So let's just put it into those frames. That's really the way we're supposed to be working here. Start with your frames, put the stuff into those frames. So if I click into that frame, it puts it in the frame. Now you will notice that it is not centered. It is cropped weirdly. That is good. That is what we want. So put your images in oddly cropped for now. So I'm going to go get the other two. I'm going to use a different mode for that. So I'm going to go to this nice pig. I'm going to go copy image. So instead of downloading it, I'm just going to copy it. Pop on over. I select my frame that I want to throw it in. Right click and then paste into. You can see it pasted it in, but I've got some edge here, right? So I've got a little bit of, I don't know why it's so white on the top there. Something's odd. Hopefully this is the right image. And then finally I'm going to go to this rabbit. And again, I'm going to go copy image. I'm going to just do one more version of just paste into for the sake of it. And there we go. But as you've seen, all three of our images are not cropped correctly. Because it takes a sec to say, where is the frame and where is the picture? What do I mean by that? If you look here, the blue box is the frame. If I click in the middle here where the hand shows up, all of a sudden this orange line pops up. And what that orange line represents is the image that is being cropped within the frame, right? So we've got the frame, and then we've got the image within the frame. So if I ever want to just move the frame, right? So I clicked off with my selection tool. If I ever just want to move the frame, what I'm going to do is I'm just going to click on the image. I'm just going to move it somewhere else. So if I wanted to like switch places with these two, I could just do it that way, right? But if I want to just move the image within the frame, if I wanted to make this smaller, I got to either click the center like that, or I can use what's called the direct selection tool. So if I click the direct selection tool, click on the image, you can see it pops up yellow. Once I've done that, there are a couple ways to do it. So first way is if I right click on this guy and I just go fitting, fill frame proportionally. So what fill frame proportionally is going to do is it's just going to say, I'm going to keep it without warping it, and I'm going to cut off some of it, but most of the image is still there. You can see it fills it pretty well. I'm going to do the same with this one. So you can see I've got nothing in the frame at all. And if I go over, right-clicked on it, fitting, fill frame proportionally, and it fills the frame proportionally. There's a cute bag. Oh, it's so cute. But with the last one, let's say I want to like manually do it. So I want to actually resize it so that it's in the picture, but not just auto done, right? I want to crop it in a way that I want to crop it. So again, I'm going to get I've already got my selection tool. So that means this frame is very, very big. So I'm going to zoom out a chunk. See if I can see it. I can't. Oh, it is below the frame is the problem. So yeah, so you can see that the yellow picture is below. So first thing I'm going to drag it on up. So it's kind of in there. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to actually decrease the frame using the corner one. So I'm going to diagonally shoosh it down. But when I do it, I got to hold the shift key. Here's why. So if I just did it manually, look how I can resize the length and width any way I want. So let's say I just did this way. Look how warped and terrible this picture looks now. This cute rabbit does not deserve this kind of degradation. And we don't even want a little bit of warping, right? So let's say it's not that bad, but it's just like this, right? Still warped, still ugly, still not what we want. So instead, I'm going to hold the shift key down. So I've clicked on the edge, hold shift. You can see it is moving with an aspect ratio all the time. So I'm actually going to go, how about there, and then move him right into frame as I want. It's okay that it's cutting off the edges. That is what we want. So that is going to put some of the images in there. Let's say then I wanted to like recrop this particular image because, right, it's filling the whole one. But let's say I want to zoom in on this pig just a little bit. I've got the yellow box, so I know I'm just doing the image within the frame. I can hold shift, and I can actually zoom in to just that part of the image. And that's really the point of this whole like frames versus images tool, is so that you can crop stuff into the position that you already know that you need. So if you imagine if you have like a magazine or a flyer or something important, you don't want to adjust where the square is or the size of the square it's going into. You just want to adjust the image that's going that is going into that square. So that's kind of like why you do it that way. But yeah, so that is images. So you put in your cute images, you size them appropriately as you go. One thing you could run into, I do want to talk about this in this tutorial, because it happens sometimes. I'm going to zoom in a bit. InDesign sometimes doesn't trust that your computer runs fast enough, and so it will degrade the images on your end so that you're not looking at the full res images. The reason for that is it's just worried that you don't have a high-res computer. So I'm going to get my selection tool. I'm going to click on the image. And what I can do is I can go down to display performance and say with this image, use a high-quality display instead of typical or fast display. And you can see a little bit of detail came out there. I'm going to try it with this one. See if you notice that change in detail. Again, display performance, high-quality display. Ooh, it did. So you can see the hair is better. I'm going to do it with my final one, display performance, high quality display, and it changed it. So if you ever have an image that's blurry, it's not looking right, use that method to kind of see what you're doing. All right, onward to color and the other big thing of the day. So let's say I want to change this box, right? So I've got my selection tool. I've selected the box in question. The place I'm going to change the color is over here in my fill and stroke preferences. So the way I'm going to change the fill is I'm going to actually double click on this little square, and it opens up my fill options. These down here are what are called swatches. So default, you're going to have your CMYK and then your RGB. So if I want to change it red, if I want to change it cyan, kind of has those as the default. I'm going to change it to yellow for now, just so you can see. But you probably don't want just CMYK, right? You want colors that are cooler and more interesting. So there's two ways I can do that. So first, I can just go over here to this little plus sign where it says new swatch. And you can see it created a new color in here. If I just double click on that color, it opens up a swatch options where I can say what type of color do I want to choose. So if I have the numerical information of CMYK, I can put that in here. I can also just use the bar adjusters if I have something I want to adjust. With the drop down too, I can use HSB, RGB, especially HSB. A lot of things just use the hexadecimal number. So that's often a useful bit to do, right? And we're going to talk about those color options in a couple of weeks when we get into color. But I do want you to know that that is where those options exist in case you are a color girly. Now, let's say you just want to play around. You're just creating some colors for fun. You know, just sitting at home creating colors. You're going to go over to this palette box. In this palette box, you can see you can actually select all kinds of different colors. And right now, it's just within the range of yellow. But if I start with this, start with a none, it gives me all the colors of the rainbow. And I'm not going to go purple this time. What do I want to go? I'll go pink. We'll do like a pink pony club. Let's go, yeah. We'll go with that, right? Start with a nice, what do we call it? Like I don't know, a Florida International pink. Or a Tudor Watches pink. Both references which aren't going to land for anyone in this class. And what I can do is, once I've got this pink, I can go back to my little swatches panel and click new swatch. And when I do, you can see it creates a swatch from that color. So if I wanted to, for example, change this bottom section to that color, and just click on that, again, click on that text, double click on fill, scroll down, and I can just click on that swatch, and it just becomes that color. So la-di friggin' da. I now have that color palette ready to go, so that every time I go, I don't have to like manually select a color, which is nice. And you can kind of see what we're working with here. One thing we do have to do, of course, you can see it really well now. Up here, we've got enough padding, right, that's going on. But down here, the text is like on the border of the thing. We do not want the text touching the border. It's just too close to it. It just makes it seem claustrophobic and harder to read. So what we need to do is we need to create some padding. And we already talked about this in the last tutorial, but I want to show you again. Remember, we do Control B. Then I'm going to go over to Inset Spacing. I'm just going to go up like 2 clicks up, so it's about, I think that's 1/8 of an inch. And I get just this padding on the edges. Click OK. And if I click W, so I can just see it in its natural state, look how much better that looks in terms of columns within the text box, right? So I just need that padding to follow CRAP principles effectively. Whenever you have a text box, you need some bit of padding there. It can either be manually done, so you draw a text box within an existing box, or if you're just using the text box, add your padding with Control B in that way. All right, couple more things. I've just got, I think, 2 or 3 more things that are vitally important. How do you create a background, right? The background is going to invoke a bunch of other tips that you need along the way, right? So if I want to create a background, and I'm just going to add a light pink background, there's no button that I just hit that says background. Like I can't just like select background, color background. It just doesn't exist. And if I click on these, right, there's just nothing. So instead what I got to do is I do have to create a square the size of the entire document. So I'm just going to go up to the corner. I'm just going to click and drag across the whole thing. And you can see I've got a square. But it is not, there's no color in it, so there's no color appearing. So here I'm going to go over to Fill, double click on it. I'm actually going to start with my pink, but then I'm going to go over to that palette tool, that color tool, and I'm just going to make it a little bit lighter. Right about there, how about something nice and pinky. You will notice, though, it is covering the entirety of the document, which we kind of don't want, right? That's our first problem. We have this big old pink covering the whole thing. So then we have to arrange it. We have to do it like almost you imagine 3D space, this image moving backwards through the different layers. So there's 2 ways to do that. So one, I could go over to here to Quick Actions and go Arrange, Send Backward. And every time I click it, it's going to send it 1 more level backward. So Arrange, Send Backward. Or I can just do Arrange, Send to Back. And I'll send it behind all of the things. And you can see that's the way I get the image shoved where I want it to be. The other problem we run into is that people will have very complex layouts. So let's say I love these 3 images. I don't want to move them, but I keep accidentally clicking on them. Or I love this background. Often it's the background. So let's say I love this background, and I don't want it to change if I click on it. I just want it to be like locked in, you could say. I'm going to right click on it and just go lock. And now when I try to click on it, nothing happens, right? And that's because it is locked into the interface. So I cannot accidentally click on it. Other things I can click on, but I cannot click on that background. And it's super useful if you've got a lot of layers working out. You can just say, as soon as you're done with a part of it, lock it down. But you say, Dr. Little, how do I unlock this, right? I would go up to Window. You want to make sure you get your Layers panel. So you can see there, Layers. But already I think this is my Layers panel. It is. So if you already got that little pop out with these little layer looking things, you can click that. Usually it pops out just Layer 1. And you got to hit this arrow of a drop down. You can see down here I've got this one already locked. And I can unlock it that way. So I can just lock and unlock layers in here. Indeed, I could go through and I could lock all the layers. I can unlock them. That's a nice thing in case you have, again, a very complex design and you want to have some control there. You can also view and unview. So let's say you get multiple versions and you just want to unview it. You can kind of do it that way, which is nice. So that is the Layers panel. It's not a necessary panel, but I think it is useful for a lot of people along the way. One final tip that I forgot to talk about, or one final part of it. Let's say I've got this top part, and I want to put an outline around it. Now, in our design sins, which we're going to talk about in I think, next week, it is oftentimes not a good idea to put outlines, because they can be bulky, they can be problematic, but occasionally you put a nice outline around it so it matches other things, it creates some dimension, it can work. So where you do that, it's going to be over here in Stroke. So like before, just double click on the middle of that square to change the color. I'm just going to change it to black, so I'll create a nice black stroke. And then here is where you increase the amount. So I'm going to go up to 10. You can see I've created a stroke around the edge. Within here, you can see I can click on the word stroke as well. And I can do some options with it. So instead of like a straight line, I can put on a triple line. I can put on a wavial line. It can get real grandma got too much power with the Cricut machine, if you know what I mean. Playing around with the stroke and those types of things. But I want you to know those options are there and they are useful for you as you go. So I think that is all of the things. As I click back to the previous one, click back to here. By now, I think creating a layout, putting some colors in, putting some pictures in, that's the bar I want you to kind of get to for InDesign along the way. So hoping that made some sense, and I will catch you guys in the next video. Adios.